There we go. So I just
Uh,
introduced myself. Welcome all. Jess,
Todd,
yes.
do we want to give a quick just shout out if you're not speaking, can you mute? We're hearing a little bit of background noise. I don't know if you're hearing it, Todd, but thank you. Sorry. That's the first thing on the recording. Let's go.
Let's go. Right. So if you go on mute if you're munching your breakfast in the morning. Now, I'm just kidding. So I just introduced myself. I'm going to introduce Jess, who has many years of experience. We're super excited. And what I love about Jess's story, so we connected many, many months ago. We had this in the diary, and we said we've got to do something with Shakers. It's an important time to help articulate the value of learning and development L&D, especially in the age of AI. What's our role, etc. And I was able to get hot off the press many months ago that Jess was working on a awesome new book, which I hope some of you have had the chance to grab. Spoiler alert. So towards the end, we've got a prize giveaway. So we're going to give away 2 copies of Jess's book, sponsored by Manager Kind. So we'll tell you how all that's going to work. Stick around to the end, and we're going to give 2 lucky recipients a copy of the book. We've done this twice now, and we loved it the first time with Keith Keating, and I really wanted to do this for Jess as well. It was a surprise to her. We only agreed this a few days ago, so I'm really excited to do it. So stick around. Jess, many people already know you, but for those who don't, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I have been, let's see, I'm in the US. I live in the Phoenix, Arizona area, as we said, right here in the heart of the desert. Saad and I were doing Fahrenheit to Celsius conversions earlier before you all came on. It's quite warm here. Still, even. I've been in learning and talent development my entire career, so I just ticked over 30 years, which I don't feel like I should be old enough to have done anything for 30 years, but that's the reality. And my very first learning or training job, which I don't even count in those 30 years, is I was a crew trainer at McDonald's here in the US. So that was my first one, which was really an order taking role, which we can talk about at some point. And all the way up, all the jobs to vice president of learning. Left my corporate role about 2 years ago, a little over, and started my own consulting practice and then wrote the book. So that's a brief snapshot. I really like hiking and silly socks. I feel like there's no room in the world for boring socks. So that's a little bit about me.
You're kind of making me glance at my socks, and they're not very boring. But I feel like we should all share a fun fact about ourselves.
Yes,
So
do it.
so share that in the chat. So a fun fact is I'm allergic to sugar, and which is a good allergy, I guess. When I first met my wife, I didn't want to admit that. So I had a bite of something and ended up in the ambulance, basically, which is a fun but also silly fact. So anyway, I'm not expecting you to come up with something crazy like that. Jenny, wow. Okay.
Oh,
I saw
Jenny.
Jenny's in the chat. That's just
I know,
hilarious.
me too. Way to shock everyone. Ate too many. Turn orange in yes.
I can't
Funny.
swim, can't ride a bike. Keep it coming, keep them coming, and we'll try and bake in a bit of laughter like in between as well. Thanks for kicking
I
that
feel
off.
like maybe there should be an L&D Shakers bike riding group, bike lessons.
I think you're onto something there. I thanks Jenny for distracting for my kind of silly and humiliating story. Uh, so Carol was a multi-millionaire in my first post-college job. Actually, I worked in South Korea as a teacher. I
Oh,
made millions in South Korea. I love that. Awesome, awesome. Uh, South Korea is very popular nowadays, isn't it? With all the hype, all the Netflix
hmm.
shows and goodness me. Just on a treadmill, listening to this webinar. Wow, Linda, you are on fire watching this on a treadmill. What do you think, Jess, about that? Would you ever do something like that?
Always. Yeah. I'm really good at listening to things while I exercise. Listening to podcasts, webinars, that's my favorite thing. So, yeah, Linda, I hear ya. I see ya.
Love it. Swam with sharks as well. This is the best unplanned icebreaker ever.
It was completely unplanned, yes.
It's good. I think let's get to it, but please feel free to share your stories. We absolutely love it. So going back to why we're here, you mentioned, what led you to writing your book, right? L&D, Order Taker No More. You've got the battle
Mm.
scars. You've been in the game for a long, long time. Let's start with something real easy. What kind of what inspired you to write the book now, especially?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I back up, so first of all, I've always been this kind of learning and talent development leader who has this little phrase that just scrapes in the back of my head all the time that says there's got to be a better way. And so I was always looking for what was that better way. When I was younger, I thought the better way was to create really awesome, engaging learning experiences. So how can we make them as engaging and impactful and memorable as possible? And did that really well. And when I started leading L&D teams, I led them to do the same. And then I quickly discovered after a few months of doing that role that that wasn't enough. So it wasn't enough for us to spend all of our time perfecting our product. And the time that I discovered that was, or what maybe smacked me across the face was I was not literally, but I was sitting across from a stakeholder and she looked me straight in the face and said, Jess, your team's training wasn't good enough. And I knew well and good it was good enough. The training itself was great. It was well done. It followed all the best practices. It was interactive. It was engaging. It was designed to retain information, all of the things. The problem wasn't the training. I mean, we could have perfected that all day long, but it wasn't solving the problem that the stakeholder expected it to solve. And so that was my moment of saying, we've got to do something differently. And I didn't know what it was. I went to learning and talent development resources, didn't find anything really that could inform me. So I had to study parallel professions like sales and marketing, project management, all of those. And I started at performance consulting. I started picking up little pieces and just experimenting, trying different things. And I would say after about 3 years, we completely shifted. I completely shifted the way that our team worked from a place where we were very much order takers to one where we were what I now call strategic business partners. And we were having a blast. We were working on all the largest initiatives in the organization. We were solving talent challenges. We were in lockstep with the business. We had the measures to prove it. And I kind of sat back at that moment and thought, why doesn't everybody work this way? What's going on? Because I think this narrative, Saad, this narrative of order taker, strategic business partner is not new, right? We've been talking about this for a long time, but yet the progress hasn't happened. And so once I was able to do that, I felt like, wait a minute, we have to do something differently because the amount of impact we were able to have in the organization at that time was so much bigger than when we remained in that little box of order taking. I no longer had people looking across the table to me saying the training wasn't good enough because we didn't even create the training unless we knew that was the answer. And we were much more strategic. And so I started asking questions. I interviewed learning leaders from across different industries and sizes of companies. Am I the only one? Have you been able to do this? And if you had, what did you do differently? And if you haven't, why? What keeps you stuck? And then all of that became the book. So my experience, as well as the stories of all these people I interviewed, became what I wanted to be and what I believe is the handbook I never had. So that moment when I said, "Well, how we need to work differently, but how do we do this?" That's what I wrote the book for. I think at this point in time, it is even more important than it has ever been because of all of the digital transformation that we're going through, right? I think that we need to keep our fingers on the pulse of that. But what's going to happen if I had my crystal ball, which I don't know how accurate my crystal ball is, but if I had my crystal ball, would be I believe a lot of our transactional work, AKA our order taking work, will be done by our digital counterparts, or at least a large part of it will, maybe not all of it. And so the skills that we have that we haven't tapped into, which are skills, more consultative skills, more expertise on what will work, what training will solve and won't it solve, working to solve talent challenges. Those are the skills we need to lean into, which are also the skills that a strategic business partner has. And so I think that's why the book now was our profession needs to keep moving forward and changing. And I felt very compelled once I kind of felt like maybe I figured some of this out. Now we need to share it with everyone so we can all make this change. As you can tell, I'm getting a little feisty, sad.
I could tell why, because you said, it's been going around for a long, long time, and that
Yeah,
passion is what we need. And there's so many things to unpick there. One is you said I find when I'm working with engineering leaders, technical leaders, or L&D leaders, and helping them to influence and develop an executive mindset, strategic influencing skills. I do feel like what you said is true. We can look very insular. So when you said you went to parallel disciplines, sales, marketing, I can see more of us doing that in marketing and project management, borrowing from these different disciplines. So I think that's such a great call out. I also think what you said is really crucial, which is in the age of AI, in the next 5 to 10 years, probably in the next 3 to 5 even, some of the best L&D leaders are actually proactively having this dialogue about what should the role of L&D be in the organization and completely stripping the DNA away. It's like, what if L&D didn't exist? What business problems would we be solving and in what way? And we talked about L&D being a potential facilitator, like a super facilitator of just bringing everyone together, and we're no longer just about learning. So many terms you talked about. There's a lot of confusion still between terms like strategic, proactive, value. I need you to set the record straight for us. What do these things really mean? Strategic, proactive, value? Because you could be proactive but not strategic, for example. Good to get inside your mind about what these terms mean.
for sure. Yeah, I'll share what my opinion is of these terms. So strategic, to me, that means we are working according to a strategy or a plan which is intentionally designed to contribute to achieving business goals and solving talent challenges. So there's a plan, there's a strategy. We're doing little pieces along the way. It's almost like we have this map from one end to the other. And the opposite of strategic is reactive. So when we don't work intentionally to accomplish a plan, instead we just sort of kind of whatever our stakeholder report is most needed at the moment, this is the flavor of the month kind of strategy, or I shouldn't even call it a strategy, this flavor of the month approach. That's the opposite of working strategically. And we can accomplish much more when we work strategically, but it can be difficult to do, especially if we live in an organization where the prevailing narrative is that learning and development is reactive. They take orders. Proactive, I think, means we aren't waiting for others to act. So we aren't waiting for requests. We are able to act before the request comes in, even. So we're ahead of it. And we know the way that we do that is we know enough about the business that we can make recommendations before those requests come in. And those recommendations contribute, again, to achieving business goals, solving talent challenges, and improving performance and moving the organization forward. So it's interesting, Sad, one of the behaviors that was common amongst those that I interviewed who were able to work more often as strategic business partners was a more proactive behavior. And one of the things they did was insert themselves. So they didn't wait for invitations to meetings. If they needed to learn about the business, they maybe had to ask for an invitation, but they'd say, I'd love to sit in on this meeting and listen in and learn more about the business itself so that I can be a better partner for you. And I asked, do you get pushback on that? And most of them said, not really. And if we do, if somebody says, why would you learning person want to sit in on this meeting? They said, we say, well, we just want to learn. We don't even need to say anything in the meeting. We want to learn more so we can be a better partner to you. And at that point, they usually were allowed to sit in the meeting, but they didn't wait. They weren't waiting for somebody to tell them. They were taking action before that. So to me, that's one example of proactive work. Um, Value, I think when I think about value, because that was the third term you said, I think the specifics of value and value creation can be defined differently based on the individual organization, but because what each organization values could be different. But when I think about adding value, I think about adding more, which in the case of learning and development, value is realized in measurable positive impact on the organization overall. So when learning and development is aligned with achieving the business goals, and we're able to say that we have contributed to that and there's been a positive impact, that is added value. because the value of what we bring in learning and development, it doesn't live in the training session alone. That's not the value. The value is in the impact or the outcomes that that training has on the larger organization. So that's my interpretation side of those three: strategic, proactive, value.
I would love to hear people's thoughts in the chat. And by the way, we are going to do something different this session as well. We're going to have a 10-minute breakout as well in another 15 minutes. So you can get to know each other and network. I know some of you, this is your first Shakers session. And also you can just network over similar challenges. So I would subscribe exactly to your definitions. And I think many of us would as well. I'd add a follow-on question when I speak to a lot of yeah, please let us know in the chat. So Dinah's nodding, totally agree as well with that perspective on what strategic. Here's another one. Could I challenge someone to articulate a different view of strategic and proactive? I would love if someone could articulate a different one. Um,
Or even a variation of, maybe not completely different, or
yeah,
an add on.
love it. You just added and varied my questions. I love that. That
I
that
know.
was that was good. I liked it. What I was also going to ask is, do you I see a lot of leaders, including engineering leaders and L&D, and you're going to hear me say that a lot because it's not just us who are trying to be more proactive and strategic, right?
Hmm.
A lot of us are execution oriented at the moment. I see a lot of us trying to shift completely strategic. How should the pendulum swing? Should it swing completely the other way? What is reality?
Well, reality side is that we can work strategically, but the strategy ultimately needs to inform the action. It's just that the strategy comes first, not the action. We don't snap the action up into the strategy. We don't, I mean, we don't come up with the action and then figure out where it fits in the strategy. We come up with the strategy first. So another one of the behaviors with these leaders that I interviewed, and I would say very much our team, we did this as well, what is something I call big picture, small step thinking. And the order is important. So we ground ourselves in the bigger picture of where we're trying to go. And then we design all of the small steps that it takes to get there. So let's say we want to get to the top of the staircase. We're not going to jump there in one jump. We can see that we want to get there, but we know we need to take one step at a time to get up there. So I think the two need to work together. If you have strategy with no execution, then you've just got words. If you've got execution without strategy, then you fall into potentially this, what I call the flavor of the month trap, which is, oh, whoever comes to you with the loudest voice at any moment, that's what you do. We need training. Our managers can't give feedback. We need you to create feedback training. Okay. And then next month, oh no, we need a communication boot camp, or we need whatever it is. We need coaching training for our leaders. And then you believe them, which I mean, you should, but at the same time, without that strategy, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but basically there's a trade-off, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so if you're only flavor of the month execution, you're never going to be able to work strategically because you won't have time to do that. So they play together. They're both needed.
I agree, and if it helps, a phrase we use internally with my L&D team, we call it being strategically opportunistic. So as an alternative, so because even the best entrepreneurs, the best companies, they will get an opportunity that just emerges, or a challenge, or a risk, or a crisis that just emerges. So you have to respond to that. You're not going to turn away, $3 million just because it's not in your strategy, for example. So that you are going to be reactive, but we call it being opportunistic, but in the right way. Again, just different flavors and mindsets, but all building on what you said. Yeah, go on,
Yeah,
Jess.
and I think somebody brought up a good point, which was Liza, when you were talking about being at the Shakers event and the difference between proactive and strategic. And there's definitely a difference there, because you can be proactive,
Mm.
meeting with managers and knowing there's going to be a need for something or other. But if it isn't strategic, if it doesn't fit into that overall plan, if you will. Unless, I mean, I also would say there's sometimes you can make a strategic decision if, for example, one of your goals is to gain visibility or to gain influence. There's a strategic decision there so that later you can work more strategically. That's kind of part of getting to the strategic
Mm.
business partner place. So strategic and proactive, yes, can be very different,
Indeed. Sarah, you
but
got
they
a
can also
question?
work together.
Absolutely. If you're getting questions, feel free to put your hand up at any time. Anyone can ask questions. Sarah, over to you.
Oh yeah, Sarah Nella Reynolds, she, her. I'm in Seattle, Washington. I work for Sound Transit, which is our public transit agency.
Hmm.
And I put something in the chat. We're going through a huge genesis in our organization. We
Mm,
just went through a major reorg. We have about 1,500 employees, but we partner with tens of thousands of vendors. But
mm,
focusing on our employees, what we're realizing is we have been an order taker, we have been reactionary, or we just put training out there that we don't even know if they need. So what we're doing is shifting our model, and we haven't
Hmm.
implemented this yet. And if you look in the the chat, but we're changing the title and some of the responsibilities of our existing program manager trainer folks. And so we're creating something called an L&D partner. And in that picture, we're thinking about our business lines. And for us, a business line is any group or person and their people who report to our CEO. And we're going to be partnering with our HR business partner and our talent advisor to really understand the strategy of these groups, eventually do a learning needs analysis, sit in on meetings and things like that. So we're in the I would say yeah, I'd say the beginning stages, but our team has had many discussions. We have a job description and whatnot. So we're getting there, and I'm so excited to be here. So this is a shift that we're making intentionally. That's all. I just
Great.
want to share that. Thank
No,
you.
smart. Smart, smart, very smart. And that is exactly what we did in our organization as well. I actually ended up eventually reorging our team so that everyone on the team was tied to a certain business unit, and their responsibility was to meet regularly with that business unit and be the basically the way kind of I put it was I want you to tell their story in the circles where they don't sit. So, and I would do the same. So I met usually with people at VP, director level, and then those others on my team would meet with managers or supervisors in their assigned areas. I also talked with other folks in the process of doing all of the research and interviews. Another approach was to not by business unit because it depends on the area, but by expertise or background. So one gentleman I talked to in a manufacturing world, he had somebody who really was good at working with technical roles. And so instead of a business unit, he was assigned to basically work with all the technical roles. Somebody else was assigned to work with the leadership management kind of more needs and function. And so it was just structured slightly differently. So there are different ways, but that partnership model can really, and hopefully this happens for you too as you move forward, but it can really allow you to become a true partner to that group where you're sitting with them, talking about problem solving, brainstorming together, creating a strategy collaboratively. All of those things happen when you're able to really zone in and focus on one area. So good luck with that. I hope it works as well as it did and has for me and others that I've talked with.
I love the business triangle concept. I love that. Thanks so much for
Mm.
sharing as well. And if anyone else has tips or tricks or just would like to make a comment or even suggest some tips, please do that in the chat or come off mute. We'd love to hear your voice as well. You mentioned visibility, Jess. What comes first, visibility or credibility?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. One that I haven't been asked before, so kudos to you for that one, for sure. And but I mean, based on my own experiences, I think visibility of some type generally needs to happen first. Now, maybe the visibility is true visibility where you're meeting with somebody and they know who you are. Maybe it's they catch wind of something that you've done. And so the visibility is in some writing you've done or a course that you've done. And I don't know if you're defining visibility and credibility differently than I am. But I think that someone needs to know who you are and what you do, and then you can build the credibility you need to be and build credibility by in part being good at your job and in part letting go of your ego. So
Mm,
we don't walk into meetings oftentimes saying leading with our L&D expertise. We walk in with curious questions about the business. And interestingly enough, the more interested you are in other people, that builds credibility faster than you trying to be interesting often. Um, I think we build credibility by consistently delivering well as in the smaller interactions. We build credibility by understanding the business. Listening is huge in
Mm.
credibility, asking thoughtful questions and following through on promises. It's interesting because I think following on through on promises
Mm.
sounds like it should be something easy, but I can't tell you how many times been leading teams where you miss a promise and then that dings your credibility. So if you say you're going to get back to somebody on Friday, even if it's a little thing, get back to them by Friday, even if all you say is, "Hey, I'm still working on it." That amps your credibility really quickly, which is really interesting to me, but it does. So those are not, and I don't think these are just for L&D. I think these are
Yes.
kind of thoughts for everyone. But I think credibility comes with knowing a person and knowing the business. I'm in Diana's head, apparently.
Diana was screaming. She was like, "Yes, I saw you, Diana," which was awesome to see. I saw, yeah, that was a great way of articulating actually visibility and credibility. And it's not only just what you do, but actually how you do it and involving people in your how. I find like
Hmm.
myself, I used to work behind the scenes. I used to get a little bit of input, work behind the scenes, and I wasn't confident enough to have one meeting with a senior leader, never mind have a series of meetings with many stakeholders. I understand, a lot of us on this call will be a bit like that, a bit shy, a bit introvert. We don't want the glory, and we associate visibility with with glory, and it's absolutely not that. It's how do you shine a light on the issues, not your issue, but a business issue and a collective issue. So that reframing is really really important, right? Just because I think a lot of this is a mindset thing as well.
Oh, a lot of it is a mindset thing. Yes. A lot of it. But
Totally, the
yeah,
whole
and a
thing.
lot of it is, the work that we do isn't about us. Really, the purpose, and sometimes I think we got to get back to the basics of why our function exists in an organization. Why does somebody pay? Because executives don't pay for full functions in organizations just to do nice things. Why does somebody pay to have a learning and development function in an organization?
Yeah,
The reason is so that we can improve the performance of the people in the organization. We can move the organization forward by developing the talent, skills, capabilities needed for that organization to succeed. And so it isn't about the flashy training. It's
yeah.
about helping the organization move forward.
Yeah, I like the Sarah's point as well. Like, just crash the meetings. You don't need to be on the agenda. You don't need to have any reason to be there except I'm just gonna listen. And they will find that odd because people in sales and marketing will always have an opinion. But I love your almost being a chameleon in the room and just absorbing it all. And then after the session, I used to make notes of all the vocabulary. I'm being really honest. I used to make notes of all the keywords people used to
Hmm.
say. If there was I used to observe the way in which some of my senior colleagues would speak, and how when they would pause and when they would stop pursuing a line of inquiry. So
Hmm.
that's all when you're quiet and simply there to learn, which I love your phrase as well, Jess.
Yeah,
You start to pick up things.
listening for more than what's said.
Mm,
You're listening and observing. What are the themes that come up over and over again? What are people continuously talking about? That's probably important. What are the acronyms you don't understand? Jot those down so you can ask leader. I mean, I call it almost learning by overhearing. You're just sort of listening. Who tends to hold the floor more than others?
yeah,
Where's the tension in the room?
yeah.
Paying attention to those kinds of things can be equally as important. And then, Sarah, your comment reminds me there was one gentleman that I talked to, and he kind of put it in a funny way. He said, I ask my team to just pull up a chair to the table. And he said, not like a nice quiet chair. I want them to pull up like one of those old metal folding chairs that scrapes across the floor as they pull it up. So everyone notices that you're there, but it's not, but like I had this cartoon version in my head. He's like, they don't notice that you're there. And he said, and I tell them, don't pull your chair up to the table angry, like angry that you weren't invited. Just invite yourself to the party and pull it up and be happy that you're there. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a fun, I don't know. I like to think in cartoons. So to me, that was a funny image, but very relevant as well.
it reminds me that we sometimes can put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And so just take this, these things take the sting out of it all. You just, yeah, you're just there to have a bit of fun. I want to open up the breakout rooms in 5 minutes. So there's, in chapter 4 of your book, and everything is great in the book, but in chapter 4, you talk a lot about business acumen, and I wanted to ask you, who are L&D's customers? Who are our real stakeholders and customers?
And yeah, I think, and you did ask me about this before. I think we chatted about this. And I think that the stakeholders for us are those in the business that we need to work with in order to align to business goals, determine our strategy, and solve the problems in the organization. I mean, those who are the recipients of our product, we need to keep them in mind as we're creating or solutions. But for me, it's really who has a stake in the success of learning and development's work. And the
Mm,
stake they have is whether or not that's going to solve a problem for them or ease a pain in the organization. So I think that customer or recipient of our training or whatever product we're including is important, but different than stakeholders. Sometimes there's overlap, but I think it's more stakeholders are more the drivers of the projects behind them because they're the ones
mm.
who really want to see the pain point solved. That's how I define it, Saad. Do you define it differently?
A good question. So whenever I ask, again, engineers, L&D leaders, they go to their internal departments who are in effect internal customers. But
Mm-hmm.
very rarely do we say our customers are the ones who use our products, like the reason why the
Mm-hmm.
company exists. So the end user, the end customer, the person who's taking out the subscription, the person who's booking a flight, the person who's using our hotels. And when you start to shift the mindset, then you start to ask questions differently. I think the reason why it's hard for us to ask discovery questions whenever we get a training request is because we that mindset, we're still stuck a little bit in that customer trap, of who is it. But the moment we start to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, we start to understand their pain points. Like, why are they waiting in the queue for so long? Why is it that they can't get the goods shipped on time? Whatever business you're in, I'm just picking a few different examples of clients that I've worked with. That I think is partly the mindset shift, but it's both. It's all. And I like the way you broke down the difference between customers and stakeholders in your view. I think that was great. Skipping ahead to chapter 12, when we start to look at the sort of the way you take us on a journey in your book is you then end up with like almost giving us some baby steps, right? Like practical, actionable tips and tools, which is so great that you do that in the book. What baby steps, right? We've talked about a lot of things, but if someone who's trying to make a gentle nudge and a shift towards this way of thinking, no more L&D order taker, no more. I want to be proactive and strategic. What would be the few things that worked for you when you were a VP and you were
Yeah,
changing culture? What worked?
if there's one thing you can do it today. It doesn't cost you any money, doesn't cost you anything at all. It's simply a mindset shift. And it's this mindset shift from learning and talent development as helpers or support staff to learning and talent development as partners. Now, all you have to do is think about it differently. So when I show up as a helper, I am showing up as a helper in my mindset. I'm showing up saying, I'm here to help. What do you need? How can I support you? Which is great. We want to do that, right? But that immediately puts us in this subordinate position. And it also tells the stakeholder that we're meeting with that we are just here to do whatever you want and whatever you need, even if that's not going to solve the problem. What do you not want? What do you need? So, and that conversation then tends to be very transactional. And it tends to be like, what do you need? What are the learning outcomes you're trying to achieve? When do you want the training to be done? How long do you want it to be? Can we do e-learning or do we need to do it in person? That's where the helper conversation goes. When I show up with a partner mindset, I show up as your equal. And it doesn't matter to me what level you are in the organization. I show up as your partner in problem solving. And so our conversation now is more about the problem that needs to be solved than it is the solution at that point in time, because training might not be the solution. Now, right away, you might not be able to do a ton of things differently. And the reason I end the book with it's called Find the Opportunity in the Order is because We can't just walk in tomorrow and decide, I'm going to be a strategic business partner. Now I'm working differently. Our stakeholders are going to look at us like, you're crazy. Why are you asking me all these different questions that you've never asked me before? Aren't you the training person? Just go do that. I mean, that's happened to me. So what we do is we do what we need to in that moment, but we maybe shift our mindset a little bit. So let's say I have to take that order. I am not in a position at this moment to even have a super in-depth conversation. But I ask myself, if I was truly a partner, what would I be doing in this scenario that's different? What question might I ask differently? Or how might I even inform that stakeholder? You know what? I know in the past you've worked with me and I've done the training for you, but I want to make sure we really nail this. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions that might not make sense to you right now, but I promise they're going to help me out. Something like that. We always make it about the stakeholders win. We always make it about solving the problem. And that's the partner mindset in action. So even just try it. Your next meeting, think of yourself not as a helper. I'm not here to help. I'm here to partner. Some of the organizations I talked to had even taken in and tried to shift their language. So instead of using the words help and support, oh, yeah, I'd love to help you with that. They'd say, I'd love to partner with you to find a solution. And so they'd even start to work on changing the language to start signaling that they were going to be working differently. So that's one thing that can be very powerful. That's just an eensy, beansy, tiny thing. You don't have to announce to anyone. You just shift it in your own mind and see what happens.
I love that. And is it Latonia? Do you want to ask your question? I know you've already asked it in the chat.
Oh,
Do you want to come off mute maybe and just share your thinking a little bit?
Sure, yes, thank you. And it's pronounced Latanya. Thank you. I'm just thinking about in terms of us working on shifting our mindset, which really resonates with me. And I work with Sarah Nell, so it's very,
oh,
very relevant. And I'm just kind of wondering, are there any strategies that you may be able to provide to help us work with our own interest holders, aka stakeholders, to help them to kind of work through thinking of us more as partners as opposed to order takers, because very much so we're in that space right now where
nice.
we want you to come in and do this thing. And when there tends to be a little bit of asking questions, there tends to be some resistance of, I want you to do this. So how do we kind of help guide them to think of us more as partners as opposed to being that order taker?
Yeah. So I'll share a couple of things. One is this move from order taker to strategic business partner is not a process change. So we can't just walk in and do our work differently and expect that things will change. If we are thinking of it as a process change, we are thinking of it much too small. So yes, there are processes that will need to change in order for us to work differently. But what this is a cultural and mindset shift for everyone in the organization. It is not, so we are talking about a move that is a cultural mindset shift. It's not just we show up and do differently. Now, the things that we do differently assist with that. But the other thing that that means, and what I found is that order taker to strategic business partner doesn't exist. They are opposites, but there's a lot of things in between. They're not exclusive dualities. They're not dualities. It's not one or the other. So what they actually exist on a continuum, and the continuum can be constantly shifting depending on who you're meeting with that hour, or depending on if the organization's going through a reorg, or it can be different from hour to hour, day to day, month to month. The goal is not to move from one end of the continuum to the other in a single leap. The goal is to do small things that continuously begin to shift the needle down the continuum so it gets closer to the end where the strategic business partner is, and you're working more often as that than the other. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens through very small shifts. And so if you are in a culture where where it is very much not why are you asking me these questions? Then it is, what can you do within taking that order that can just crack the door a little bit to show that maybe we're going to do something just a little bit differently. There was one gentleman I talked to who said, like one of his strategies was, he called it guerrilla measurement, like Guerilla. He snuck it in. Nobody asked him for measurement, but he went and figured out how to add some measurement. And then at the end, when he could show some differences, people were like, oh, well, that's really cool. And so little tiny things that you can do within there. The second thing that I want to say about the partner mentality is this, and I can't remember which chapter it is in, but it's about playbooks. So I'll tell this story. There was one day I was complaining to my boss, nobody understands how we do our work. They expect we can just work miracles. We get this work done they don't get what we do. And her words, this is one of the best bosses I ever had. She said, "Jess, we need to train the business to do business with us." And I thought, hold on a second. I'm sitting here blaming them for not understanding the work that I do, and I have never told them. So what happens is if we don't lay out ahead of time sort of what some of those expectations are, and again, we probably can't change them all overnight. But if we're expecting people to react to us in a certain way and we've never actually told them, then they're going to fill in the gaps themselves. And we fight a lot of legacy thinking in learning and development based on our educational system and some other things about how we believe learning happens. We believe learning happens in a formal way. In L&D, we don't necessarily think about that, but our stakeholders don't think about, oh gosh, I wonder how learning and development could be more effective. They think, oh, I've got a problem. I need somebody to train my people. And so that's what I'm going to come to you asking. We've never actually told them what we do or shown them a different way. We just sort of expect them to know, and they fill in the gaps themselves because we haven't. And so one of the strategies that we used was to create what we called an external playbook. And I call it external because we had an internal one too for how we functioned as a team, which is very important to get our own house in order. But we had this external playbook that very much outlined what it means to work with us. And we didn't pass it out, but what it did to our stakeholders, what it did was allowed everybody on the team to be on the same page. So some of the things in that were, number one, a very clear intake process that tied to the goals and initiatives of the organization. So we started asking these questions at the onset. And at first people were like, we don't get it. We said, that's okay. You don't need to fill out a form. Let's just have a conversation. I'll fill out a form for you. The intake process isn't a form. So that was one thing. The other thing that we did was come up with how do people typically work with us? And in that typical work, how long does it normally take? What are the typical results? So we could say, you've got different options if you want to work with us. If we really want to do this learning project, we can do it one of three ways. We can create a full simulation for you. That's going to take you about 6 months. And here's what the outcome of that's going to be, because we have measurable outcomes. If you want to look at a single workshop with some reinforcement, that's going to take this much. If all you need is potentially like a PDF job aid, that'll take this much time. And that's going to tie to these types of results. And so we were able to say, for example, we knew when we took somebody and revamped them into our formula for onboarding, we knew that it reduced time to production by 50% in almost all cases because we had the measures for that. And so we would share that with people. We'd say, if you want to go to this is about how much time it's going to get you, but these are going to be your results in the end. And so being able to talk about what we did in a very structured way, and then also say, now, when you do work with us, this is what happens. We're going to ask you these types of questions traditionally, and these are going to be the roles and responsibilities in a project. We actually, when we started this, and there was a little bit of kickback at first, we asked people to sign off on a project charter that did say, and we had a kickoff meeting that said, a SME is this. This is what a SME is, and this is about how much time they can expect to spend. This is what their role is. A executive sponsor is this, and this is what this means. Here's my role as a designer. Here's my boss's role as a stakeholder. And so we would go through all of that, and then it became very clear. So again, all of this didn't happen overnight, but we can't expect people to understand how to work with us if we've never actually told them what that looks like or could look like, and especially couched in the what's in it for you results. So I feel like I rambled a little bit on this, but I went in a few different directions, Son. I got kind of excited. So thanks, Anya, for your question.
Wonderful. Yeah, perfect.
It's one of the things we love about you, the energy, the passion. Lots of tips are there for everybody. What I would also maybe you could do, Latonia, is think about taking a small bite at the cherry or the cake first. So maybe is there like a business line lead who you could partner with to start with? And the way you might choose that person, and I've done that myself, is if the business line lead is already slightly bought in but needs a bit more convincing, I'd rather work with them than work with someone who's completely new to me. The other thing, so who is that for you? The other business line lead that I've tried to work with is someone who brings in the most revenue or is the most influential in the business. Because if I get them on board, then I mean, I'm laughing at they then influence the others. They do the work for me. So you can be very strategic in who you choose to partner with. The other thing I'd say is these are all mindset things because I work a lot on executive mindset. I would say maybe work on your two-line intro. So when you meet a new stakeholder or the same stakeholder, I always have a non-learning type of intro. So I would say, hey, my name is Saad. I fix business problems and I work alongside you to do that. Something really, really simple, 1 to 2 lines, non-training. You're using a bit of neuro-linguistic programming, right? You're just sort of kind of psychologically hitting them a little bit with the reframe of the role. And the third thing is, if it helps, again, this is a reframe. Before you act as a strategic partner, try to become a thought partner. Because I find that a lot of when we ask discovery questions, it gets us into a very odd relationship, right? Like I don't like using this word, but slightly inferior, slightly subservient, right? And I say that not as critical of us, but as critical of others, right? So I'm going to challenge us not to always ask questions, but to say, that's interesting. So it looks like, from an operational perspective, the challenges you're facing are. So it's almost like more validating. And I think that could be a pretty useful way to try and shift your credibility or your value proposition. But lots of tips there. I hope they've all been useful as a combination between me and Jess.
Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
go on,
Saad,
Jess. I want to go. I want to go to the
I don't know
book.
that
We
yeah,
might
we're
not have
kind of
enough time for the
through the
breakouts now, will
breakouts.
we? But I want to do the
Um,
book. I want to do the book giveaway in a second. But you go. Have
okay.
final thought.
I think the champions and influencers piece is a really key one. I was always a fan of the term go where the energy is. So I never started with the naysayers. I started with who's excited to work with me and who's willing to try something new. And so for us, that was our contact center. And I think I worked in a company where we had a large contact center and they'd seen everything because contact centers typically have so much turnover. And so they were sure, we'll try something new if you think it might help us. And what we did was when we started with them and then we put the measures in place, we were able to they started telling the story. I wasn't telling the story of the success about how to work with us differently. In fact, there was one stakeholder I had who was a really tough nut to crack. And I had had a conversation with her multiple times about revamping the onboarding process and how it could be more beneficial. And finally, and she was not willing to hear it. And then one day she said, you know, one day she said something about some of the challenges she was having, and I said, what's interesting? And I always like to take this like, huh, I just thought of this. You know what's interesting is that we worked with the contact center and we revamped their onboarding and we followed this model. And we just did some measurement with them and we found that their confidence measures and whatnot improved. You know what? Why don't you ask them about what we did with them and then see if you think that might work with you and we can chat about it further. And I left it at that. I didn't even go into detail about what we did. And the next meeting we had, she came back and said, I talked to the contact center. They can't believe like the progress that they've seen based on the changes that you made. Can you do that with us? And here I've been telling her this for months and she hadn't heard it until somebody else. So I didn't start with her. That would have been a battle to the end of the earth. I started with the people who were the champions and I knew would get on board and then we could build momentum that way. So that's another strategy. So I love that, Saad. Thanks for
Oh.
spurring that thought for me.
But I love your stories. This is why, we're speaking to someone who's been there. You've done it, you've achieved it, you've got the results, and now you're sharing that with us. And so, really grateful when we spoke 6 months ago, Jess. It was a seed of an idea. We've since talked and collaborated more since then. I'm really, really pleased that we could do this. Thank you so, so much. I've learned a heck of a lot. I've been typing and scribbling down notes on my sticky paper and I'm sure others have as well. Shall we move to the prize giveaway?
Do it.
Shall we do it? Great. So 2 lucky winners will now get it. So what I've done is earlier on, I took a screenshot of all the attendees' names and I've numbered them from 1 to 32. We have had people who have since dropped off, but in the last 15 minutes only. I feel like we should still include them in. Yeah, everyone's agreeing with that. Sarah's like,
Maybe. I mean,
I,
we
I,
can do a present to win.
we can,
I think that's more fair.
yeah,
You did say at the end, stay on, and you'll get a,
that's
there's
true.
a, yeah,
That's true.
so
That's true. All right. All right. All right. So
let's give everyone here a better shot. So if
look,
so you numbered everyone's side. If I pick a number of somebody who's not here, then we'll just go to the
we'll
next
just
one.
move to the next one, right? And I'll tell you how we'll get you the book. But so two prizes. Pick a number between 1 and 32.
This is for me, right?
For
Not
you.
everybody else. Yeah.
You pick the number, Jess.
Number 20.
Okay, hold on. Uh, Laura Carmichael, are you
Is
here?
Laura? Laura's here.
Yay!
I
Did I
see her
say
name.
your name correctly? Laura, are you with us?
She's
You're on
on my
mute.
screen.
Yeah, you're on mute if you're talking. I need your email address. Well, actually, I should get it from the registration list. So, but if you could email me, I'll give you my email address. That way I can get to you. So congratulations. Ah, Laura, you're off mute.
Yeah,
Yay.
I am here. Sorry, I was just stepping out of the train, so I didn't want to. I'm super happy that I won a book. That's amazing. That's so cool. Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed the session. I will definitely use it. I lead a L&D team in the university in Eindhoven, and we can definitely use your input.
Awesome.
This is the difference we like to make. So the book are sponsored by my company. Very happy to do that because we love to help. So another number, final second lucky winner. Pick another number, Jess.
8.
Oh, that's nice and easy. That's on my first list. Crystal
Okay.
Andress.
You're welcome. What's that?
Crystal.
Yay!
Yay, Crystal.
Congratulations. Let's go. Let's
Thank
go.
you.
You've attended a few events, so I feel like you deserve it.
So I
Yeah,
have
I
one
have.
more
I have.
one more gift I can give to everyone here. In the book, about between parts 1 and 2, there's an assessment that you can take. It's just a self-reflective assessment to kind of get an idea of maybe where your biggest areas of opportunity are to start working to become a strategic business partner. And I have also created that in a fillable PDF copy that is available on my website. So I'll put the link there. It's not gated right now, so you don't have to even put in your email to get it. That's just part of the release of the book. I'm offering that. So if you want to go in and look at that, it will tell you which areas of the book maybe you want to focus on. And if you're not looking at the book, at least you have an idea of maybe some areas to take a peek at. So feel free to grab that off my website if you're interested.
What a surprise. That's so generous of you. So two winners, a freebie for absolutely everybody. That's great. Please connect with Jess. You got her LinkedIn just a little bit above mine. Connect with me. We'd love to hear more of your stories. And if we can help in any other way, let us know. Both Jess and I, offer a lot of coaching. I do free 30-minute coaching. If you need any free support, any issue, just reach out. Not a problem. The way I'll connect with the winners is you can purchase Jess's book at all available online platforms, including Amazon. And so what I will give you is an Amazon gift card, just so you don't have to tell me your address, because I don't want to know, and I don't feel like you should tell me. So we'll give you the Amazon card. You can buy it at your own leisure. Please tell us how you found it. Leave a review for Jess because she's done an amazing amount of work in getting it published. Please do that. Yeah. Any final thoughts from anyone? Feel free before we sign off.
I will say that I think in the Europe right now, the book is not available by printed copy yet, but I believe you can purchase the Kindle version or the Audible version if you would like. The printed copy, I think, is not available until December in Europe. I don't know why that is. There's some rules of publishing that I don't understand, but takes a couple months to get across the ocean, I guess. Must be on a really slow ship.
Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jess. You've been amazing. Thank you. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have
Thank
a great
you.
day.